Nuclear energy possesses various benefits along with the potential to replace fossil fuels, so our group questioned why it is not advancing rapidly and becoming more widespread. We suspected that this may be a result of people not supporting its growth, so we sought to conduct a survey that would allow us to understand people's opinions and knowledge regarding the subject. By comparing approval ratings to age, knowledge, avenues of information received, and specific concerns, we could realize the general public's standpoint on nuclear energy. If it is determined that nuclear energy is viewed negatively, we can consider how we can mitigate such impressions accordingly. In the end, we hope to identify how we can improve the public's perception of nuclear energy so that it is eventually recognized as an efficient and reliable energy source.
Our first step as a group was to design a survey consisting of a few questions related to opinions on nuclear energy and how comfortable one may be living in a close radius to a nuclear power plant. Our survey included 8 questions, which were sent to ICON students and UMass Amherst students overall for response. These questions tested general knowledge of nuclear energy, opinions, concerns, and personal questions based on location. Originally, we were lacking in survey responses and decided we needed a larger sample size. So we distributed this survey in different class Discord channels, various GroupMes, the UMass subreddit, and the UMass Facebook pages, and ended up with over 100 responses. The breakdown of answers helped quantify the general knowledge and favorability of nuclear energy. We separated survey responses into groups, such as background knowledge versus approval of nuclear energy, age group versus approval rating, and comparing routes of nuclear information received. This organized our results into data we can further analyze for correlations and turn that data into easy-to-understand graphs for our poster.
After aggregating our data, we collected our responses and we sorted them out by the parameters we were looking at in order to make these 5 tables that we have shown in our poster. Table 1.1 looks at knowledge versus approval rating. Table 1.2 is age group versus approval rating. Table 1.3 and 1.4 are avenue of info received versus approval rating. And table 1.5 is knowledge versus avenue of info received. And we chose these particular graphs in order to look at the relationship between these certain parameters versus the approval rating in order to see what was affecting the public perception of nuclear power. Our biggest takeaway was that there was an association with neutrality overall for most of the parameters and requirements. In general, this meant that nuclear power was actually not suffering from a negative public perception, but rather from a, perhaps led by miseducation or lack of education, there was a symbol of neutral attitude towards nuclear power. And there were other small correlations, but it's important to note that our data was only collected from about 110 people, making it a rather small sample size. But what we did look at was that there was a slight tendency towards neutrality in general, especially with those who had less knowledge and who scored lower on knowledge, the questions, and that the highest knowledge in table 1.5 was not associated with TV shows or movies. Other than that, our data leans towards the idea that public perception of nuclear power is an issue of just simply lack of information amongst the population, or the small size of population that we looked at.
The main reason for this research is to lay the groundwork for more research, as well as relaying new insight to the surveyed population's opinion on nuclear energy. We originally wanted to know why this energy source is not focused on as much as fossil fuel burning or solar energy, and what the population felt about nuclear energy. We created a survey to test these opinions. The majority answer for each question, being neutrality and basic knowledge of this energy source, concludes that more information needs to be spread about alternative energy sources. Without approval from the general public, there will be no push for use of nuclear energy. Nuclear energy does not use fossil fuels for energy production and is much cleaner than burning fossil fuels, so future advancements to nuclear energy and positive opinions on this energy source might help to mitigate climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The majority of our answers to our survey concluded that most people who had little to basic understanding of nuclear energy were neutral about the use of nuclear energy. Neutral stances often mean no action because people don't care as much to put energy and money into it. Moving forward, this research will hopefully lay the groundwork for such information and the purpose for advocating for future reliance on nuclear energy instead of burning fossil fuels. This information is directed towards scientists, engineers, policymakers, and more, so that more research on a broader scale can possibly be achieved.